Let me take a moment and talk about Riverside.fm. It allows you to record studio quality audio and up to 4K video. When you need to record audio and video, Riverside.fm can do it. So if you're looking for a hero platform for all your recording needs, from podcasts to webinars to any video content, Riverside.fm. I've got a promo code for you where you'll receive a 30% discount on the first 3 months of your subscription. I'll give it to you twice. The promo code is SHIPIT. All one word, SHIPIT, and you'll pick up a 30% discount on your first 3 months of your subscription. Riverside.fm.
Talking to people about football history on a daily basis is very interesting, and some people have some really cool ideas to preserve the history. And a couple of gentlemen, Greg Tranter and Jeff Miller, have a collection of items from Buffalo Bills memorabilia that they wrote a book based on these objects. It's a really cool idea and a great discussion, and it's all coming up for you in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with pigskindispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of Pigskin Dispatch, and welcome once again to the Pigpen. We have a really thrilling episode here tonight. We are going to be talking to a couple of authors that I have the pleasure of meeting over the summer. They have a book called RELICS, and we have Greg Tranter and Jeff Miller that wrote a little bit about the Buffalo Bills. Gentlemen, welcome to the Pigpen.
Hey, thanks, Darren. We're happy to be here.
Yep, pleasure.
Well, maybe we could start off by you gentlemen telling a little bit about yourselves and maybe what brought you into football fandom, and maybe we'll start with Greg.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I've been a Bills fan since I was 8. My dad took me to my first game at the old Rock Pile back in 1965, and just kind of fell in love with the venue, the team. I was drawn by their standing buffalo helmet. I thought that was really cool. So I just basically fell in love with the team and started following them. And then pretty much every kid my age, we collected football cards and traded them. And so I just was really interested in the Bills. And then I just got really interested in collecting and started collecting everything Buffalo Bills from the time I was young. And in my collection, I still have the program ticket and bobblehead that my dad bought me from my first game, and it really evolved from there. And then I got into history, and I really enjoy football history. And so my collection, which is actually the largest collection of Buffalo Bills memorabilia in the world, really emanated from I wanted to capture the history of the team. And so the collection includes every program from every Bills game ever played, all kinds of game use stuff, and pretty much anything with a Bills logo on it. The collection has 108,000 artifacts in it.
Wow.
It's 8,000 three-dimensional artifacts. So that would be, game used helmets, jerseys, but also mugs, glasses, pretty much anything you can think of. So that's, that's the collection, and that's the three-dimensional collection. And then there is the paper part of it, which is 100,000 objects. And that's all the programs, ticket stubs, newspapers, magazines, football cards, autographs, are all included in that.
Wow, that is pretty impressive for a collection, and to be the largest collector of Bills memorabilia in the world. That's very impressive. And Jeff, how about you? What brought you into the love of football history?
Well, I started when I was very young too, right around the same age, but 1969 would have been about my era. But my dad was an avid football fan and watched the games, and I kind of followed on his coattails. And 69 is the year of OJ, and was also the year that I started collecting Topps football cards. So those cards are kind of iconic to me. And I didn't start out, I always wanted to be a writer, but I didn't start out being a football or sports writer. I was going to just be a to write history. I was actually going to start a Civil War book, and I kind of fell into football because all the microfilm machines at the library were being used, and I just started looking through some scrapbooks and found some pictures of the old Buffalo teams from the 1920s, and just kind of started reading about it and got interested, and then decided to write the book Buffalo's Forgotten Champions. And then from there it just kind of one book led to another, and here I am, 7 football books later, and getting to know people, through the PFRA, like Greg. That's how we met, and found we had a common interest, and we decided to write this book together. But we both have written books about Buffalo sports history. Greg's written some, and I've written some, and it's kind of a natural thing for us to come together. Plus, we're good friends, so it's worked out pretty well that the two of us collaborated on this. And the PFRA is really cool because we've really been able to develop some really good relationships with other people, not just in the Western New York community, but across the country. And I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here, Greg, but Greg just got named the Assistant Executive Director. Is that the correct title, Greg?
Yes, that's correct.
The PFRA. So congratulations, Greg. And
Thank you.
His stewardship is going to be.
I read that. So congratulations on that, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We actually have a board meeting tomorrow night.
Wow. An off-season board meeting for the Professional Football Research Association. All right.
Yes. They never stop. It doesn't matter.
Right.
All right. Okay. Tonight we're here to talk about your book that you both co-wrote, RELICS. And what was the inspiration of RELICS, and how did it come about?
Well, it was the inspiration, kind of interesting. I always wanted to, for a long time, wanted to write about the collection in some way to kind of bring the collection to life in print. And it was about 6 or 7 years ago now, I was actually at a bookstore and I saw this book that the Smithsonian had put out that was the history of America in 100 objects. And it's like, oh, that would be perfect. Do the Bills in some number of objects. And as Jeff said, we've been friends for a while, met through the PFRA. I had read all of Jeff's books that he had published up to that point. So I'm not a professional writer to the degree that Jeff is. And so I thought, well, I have a lot of knowledge of the objects. He's a terrific writer. I think we could collaborate here. So I approached Jeff about the idea of the book, and he was obviously intrigued enough to want to come along for the ride and and really help bring it to fruition. And so I would give him a tremendous amount of credit for the quality of the writing in the book. I got lots of good ideas and can tell you all kinds of history, but he's much better at the use of the English language than I am. So, so it was a really good collaboration from that perspective. And then the other part of the book is we really started out with about a couple hundred objects. And then when we got a publisher, and we had erred on the side of, let's do a lot of game use stuff, game worn helmets, game worn jerseys, all that type of stuff. And when we got our contract with St. Johann Press, which is who published it, he gave us advice and said, don't go overboard with game use stuff. You want to put in material culture stuff that a lot of the people that would read the book would have had one of those. And that was really terrific advice. So there are definitely game worn items in the book, but there's a lot of material culture things that probably just about anybody that would buy this book is going to find themselves in there in some object.
I thought it was pretty cool the way we selected the items. Like Greg said, he had a list of certain amount of items. I came in with a small list of my own of thoughts, things that I thought, but generally speaking, Greg's list was our guide, and we were able to say, okay, well, let's put this together in such a way so that we tell the story from the very beginning right on through to the Josh Allen era. So there's, we tell a story about the first game program, for example, And then, we tell a story about, the 64 Bills championship and right on up through the AFL and into the NFL, O.J. Simpson and all that stuff. So it just the object doesn't just, we're not just telling you the story about, okay, the object was manufactured by such and such company. We're telling you why it's important, who wore it, what happened when they were wearing it, or why everybody had a whammy weenie, or why everybody, why Flutie Flakes are such a big deal in Western New York, so it stretched right from the very beginning right up through. So I think even if you don't own all those items, or there's no way you could have them because they might be one of a kind things that Greg has, like he has the Ralph Wilson's gold jacket from his Hall of Fame induction. Okay, so that's a one of a kind item, but everybody can relate to Ralph Wilson, and everybody's touched by that. So the items may just tell a singular story, but it's something everybody can relate to, and it tells the whole story. And so when we talk about Ralph Wilson's jacket, we can tell the whole story about Ralph Wilson. And Greg is actually writing a book about Ralph Wilson right now, so he had a lot of information to bring in and write a whole chapter just about Ralph Wilson. And Ralph Wilson, of course, stretches from the very beginning up to the time of his demise. But it was kind of, the way we put it together, I was really impressed, and I pat myself and Greg on the back for this, because I think it's a very unique way of telling the history of a football team or any franchise. It's never been done before. And I've actually have been contacted by other people saying, I want to use that model. I want to kind of do the same thing. Can you help me? I really don't want to get involved in writing another team's history, but if they need advice or whatever, I'm more than happy, and I know Greg would be too. It's a really cool concept, and it's all Greg's idea, really.
How would they you guys go about? You have like a photograph of the object and then the explanation, or?
Yeah. So every object has a minimum of one photo, at least one. In many cases, there are multiples. We also intersperse some game action photos that support the object. So it could be O.J. Simpson's jersey and a photo of him running with the football, as an example. So there's about 200. So there's 73 individual objects that we feature, and there's about 200 photos across the book. Most of them are in color, but there are some in black and white, depending on the object or the photo or whatever. But so what we try to do, and one of the important things when we designed the book, is we wanted the photo to be with the object when we're talking about it. So it's like each object is like its own small chapter with the photo and with the story right with it. So when you're reading the story, you can be looking at the object.
Okay. Very, very interesting. Okay. Now I'm going to ask this question to Jeff, because I know Greg probably has the excitement of being a collector. He gets that excitement every time he sees the object and he has the opportunity to add it to the collection. But Jeff, as you were writing the book, what was one of maybe the most surprising items that was in Greg's collection that you guys got to discuss and write about, possibly? Maybe it was something wasn't in the book.
Well, there were two items that I think that Greg had that really kind of took me by surprise. One, because I would have never expected any private owner to own this. He had the helmet telephone from the '94 draft. Was it '94, Greg?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And it was the one that was actually used to make the calls in to report to the commissioner who the Bills were drafting. And he actually has that phone. And to me, it was like, oh my gosh, how can somebody own that?
So these are the phones that we would see like back in the day when they would have it at a Radio City music call, and the guys down the floor and they're showing the
exactly.
bill.
So it's a helmet phone with you pick it up and
that is
we're drafting Jeff Burris, and it was really, I was just, I knew he had a lot of stuff and I knew a lot of the stuff existed, but that particular item just kind of took me by surprise.
And the unique part of that object is it was the first time the NFL did throwback helmets. And so it's a standing Buffalo helmet from '94, which is why I wanted it.
Yeah. Geez. Now how do you? Well, maybe I don't want to know how you get that if you're greasing some palms or something. But no, seriously, how does something like those come up to auction, or
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, they do. Some things come up to auction. A lot of things are, as you're saying, they're kind of back office deals. I've gotten some items from the team directly. And of course, if you go back, now the NFL manages all the jerseys and stuff. Like, they don't get out into private collectors. They're going through the NFL Foundation and team sponsored stuff so that the NFL is benefiting if you're buying them. You go back 15 years, that's not the case. A player would walk out with his jersey and give it to a family member or whatever, or sell it himself. And if you go way back, like in the early 60s, the Bills handed their jerseys down to the local high schools because they didn't think there was any value in them.
Right. Wow. It's amazing how some of the things you probably saw when you were a kid, if you said, boy, if I would just grabbed onto that, it'd probably be worth something now.
Right. Right.
And every once in a while that happens, somebody will pop up, I got a 1965 Tom Sestak jersey because, he just tossed it aside and somebody grabbed it and thought, it's a great football jersey to wear when I'm playing sandlot football. They never really thought about the value. I mean, you hear about these kids who went to War Memorial Stadium in the 1960s and caught a football in the end zone. And what did they do the next week? They were out playing sandlot football with it. Now, it would be a valuable collector's item to have something with Joe Floss's signature on it. But back in those days, kids were just thinking, hey, a free football. That's the way they were looking at it. So the collector thing wasn't really there, except for cards or something like that.
Yeah. Now, Jeff, you were saying there was two items you said that shocked you.
Yeah. The other one that I really got a kick out of was, and it allowed me to kind of do, and I love to be, I consider myself a researcher, as much as a writer. And Greg had a megaphone that he had picked up at a thrift store or somewhere. Greg, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but he had picked it up. And when we talked about putting this thing together, one of the things I thought about was, hey, it would be cool to touch on the Buffalo Gills, because we talk about Van Miller, and we talk about other things that are kind of related to the Bills but aren't really the Bills. So one of the things that about the game day experience is the Buffalo Gills, the cheerleaders. And so he had this megaphone that belonged to a cheerleader back in the 70s, and we were able to track her down. And I interviewed her, and she's actually going to speak at our Western New York PFRA meeting coming up in April. But it was kind of cool to be able to track her down and link her to it, and just kind of add her quotes about it in the book and kind of, find out her backstory. But the fact that Greg had this, it's just, it was almost like cosmic. It's just like meant to happen, It's one of those things. I mean, we were able to track down Lou Pacone because he lives in town and we both know him. So we could call him up on the phone and say, tell us about your record. But, who would have known Luann Delaney, who owned the megaphone? So we were able to find her and interview her and include her in the book. I just thought that was a really cool thing. So. And
the only way that we knew that is inside the megaphone is Luann.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I contacted every Buffalo Jill that I knew and said, I'm looking for someone from, and I wasn't sure about the era. I said either the 80s or the 70s, named Luann. And I had 3 or 4 respond back to me, and they said, we think it's this person. And it turned out to be the right person. So I was able to just kind of bring it in. So.
Oh, okay. Now we know that Jeff has a secret. He has a black book of all the Buffalo Jill's phone numbers. So folks, you can hit him up on social media for those contacts. No, I'm just kidding.
So it's okay. Actually, I had 2 of them on my staff at one time. So.
Wow. Okay. Now, Greg, you said something pretty interesting. Some great advice that your publisher said about those everyday things that maybe everybody would have. I know you mentioned like the Flutie Flakes. What are some of those items that are in the book that maybe some listeners out there have in their own collection?
Well, there's different, we feature a couple like bobbleheads. So there are people out there that would get a bobblehead as a kid. We have the 1965 Topps football card set featured. And those are the tall boy cards. So they're very unique in that they're not the regular size football cards. And that set's known for the Joe Namath rookie card. So there's that. We have the McDonald's set that was put out in 1986. That a lot of people in Western New York would have gone to McDonald's and gotten some of those cards, because if you went in and you bought, a Big Mac, you got a free, group of cards and stuff like that, because each week they had cards.
Didn't they have a Cornelius Bennett breakfast sandwich or something promotion?
Yeah, that was later.
Yeah, okay.
That was the CB triple.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. We have the Darby Dinosaur books that Ray Bentley wrote, the kids' books. So, parents might have had those, or of course kids, could have had some of those. We have a bunch of We're Talking Proud memorabilia that we feature. That just about everybody in Buffalo had some piece of We're Talking Proud if they were around in the 1980s. We have Royal Crown Cola put out cola bottles or cola cans with faces of Bills players on. And that was from, I think it was 1977, one of the poorer Bills teams. So we have we feature a set of those. So, a lot of those types of things. I'm trying to think of some of the others. Of course, the Whammy Weenie that Jeff mentioned, we feature that.
Why don't you, one of you, explain the Whammy Weenie? I know what it is because I don't live that far from Buffalo, but perhaps describe it, because we're an audio podcast, so I can see it, and I know what it is, but we have people from around the world listening.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, the Whammy Weenie was a promotion that came out in 1980, and it was Buffalo's answer to the Pittsburgh's terrible towel. And it was a green hot dog shaped item that you shook at the opponents to put the hex on them. And, they were very popular for the first couple of weeks, but, after a while, when people started using them in, unseemly ways and making obscene gestures with them, they were looking for a way to take them off the market. And
no, not the Bills Mafia. I don't believe it. I don't believe it a bit.
All of a sudden, they discovered there was lead paint in the paint that was used, or lead in the paint that was used to paint Whammy Weenie on them. And so that was the excuse they used to take them off the market. But I don't think that was the whole reason. Although they did find high levels of lead, it wasn't like it was lethal. It was just an excuse. People started pointing them at Ralph Wilson or whatever in obscene ways. It was destined for the destruction. But it was pretty cool. It's pretty cool because a lot of them survive, and they're very sought after collector's items. Any Bills fan worth their salt has one.
I'm sure they do. Now I have a question. Maybe one of you can answer. Now I understand. I'm a Steelers fan in Western Pennsylvania, so I understand terrible towel is team colors. Why was the weenie green when the Bills have no green at all in their uniform code?
I don't think, Greg. I don't know. I don't think that there's any reason. I think that just happened to be. Maybe they had a surplus of green plastic.
Yeah, I don't know.
green lead paint, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I don't know. That's a good question. It's green and yellow, and there's no red, white, or blue. Well, there's white bells, but that's about it. So,
all right. Now, Greg, maybe what is maybe I know you said you have Mr. Wilson's gold jacket, his Hall of Fame jacket. That's pretty impressive. But what is sort of the star of your besides the jacket of your collection that if you're allowed to say?
Yeah, no, because we feature them in the book. One would be Art Baker's game-worn jersey from 1961. So the Bills wore blue and silver the first 2 years that they existed, that Ralph Wilson really brought over the colors of the Detroit Lions. And so the Bills wore blue and silver. And so the Art Baker jersey is a blue jersey from 1961, which is probably the only one known to exist. I think there's a couple white jerseys from that time period that are out there. I've never seen another blue jersey from those first two seasons. And then Art Baker himself is somewhat of an interesting story in that he went to the University of Syracuse and played in the same backfield as Ernie Davis. And they, of course, won the only national championship in Syracuse football history. And he played for the Bills for a couple of years as a fullback, and then lost his job when they signed Cookie Gilchrist to play fullback. So that's a very unique piece, a very cool piece. And then one of the most significant pieces is Scott Norwood's helmet that he wore in Super Bowl 25 when he kicked the ball wide right. Norwood only wore one helmet in his entire career with the Bills, and I got the helmet, in essence, directly from Scott, because he started selling off his collection. This is probably 15 years ago now. And I was able to get his helmet, and he signs it. On the helmet, he puts all of his career statistics and stuff, and he signs it wide right, Scott Norwood.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you would even want to have that mentioned, but
right,
it's part of his history, But hey, what are you going to do?
Right. So those are probably two of the most significant. Another significant piece is a game-worn jersey from O.J. Simpson during his 1973 2,000-yard season. It's not from the game that he went over 2,000 yards. It was from the Colts game, which was earlier in the season in October. But it's a game-worn jersey from that remarkable, historic season.
Yeah, I mean,
one of the things that Greg should mention is the blind referee. You want to tell the story about the blind referee?
Now watch it. I'm a retired high school official here, so I'm the Brothers in Stripes. I'm a little defensive. No, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So the blind referee was a life-size statue that sat in the Bills administration offices from 1998 to basically until Ralph passed away. And the story behind it, in 1998, the Bills went into Foxborough, and I think if it's not the only time in NFL history, one of the only times in NFL history that on a Hail Mary pass, they called pass interference. And so they gave the Patriots the ball at the 1 yard line with no time left, and they had an untimed play, and they scored the winning touchdown. And there were a couple other very controversial officials calls earlier on the same drive when they were coming down to try to score to win the game. And so, Ralph Wilson went berserk after the game. He got fined by the NFL. One of the only times, I think there was only one other time in his career that he got fined by the league for berating the officials. So he got fined by the league. And it ended up costing the Bills a home playoff game. They ended up having to go on the road, and they lost in Miami instead of hosting a playoff game at home. So it was a significant, defeat. Well,
it's always those darn Patriots too, isn't it?
I know, right?
Every controversy.
And especially in Foxborough, it's like, I think the refs are bought and paid for by Robert Kraft, but we won't go down that path. So anyway, later that season, Mary Wilson, his wife, is down in New Orleans because the Bills had their final regular season game was in New Orleans. And she went in an art shop, just happenstance, and saw this blind referee statue and decided to buy it for Ralph, with the idea that later that season, the Super Bowl was in Miami. And they have a home down in Florida near Miami. I think it's in Palm Beach. She had it shipped down there because they were going to have a Super Bowl party. And so they have the Super Bowl party, and Paul Tagliabue, the commissioner who fined him, comes to the Super Bowl party. Well, the way they set it up was the invitation was a penalty flag. A card that was shaped like a penalty flag. That was the invitation to come to the event. When they come to the event, the blind referee has a white sheet over him, so you don't know what it is. And Mary, once everybody's there, Mary gathers everyone around the steps that go up to the second floor, and the blind referee with a white sheet is right there at the base of the steps. And who comes walking down the stairs but a referee with a patch over his eye, and comes down and pulls the sheet over the blind ref so that everybody can see it's the blind ref. Mary Wilson said the look on Paul Tagliabue's face, she said, was priceless. She said he was so mad at me, and I just loved every minute of it. Well, so they put this in the after the party, they ship it up and put it in the administration building and the main office. Like when you walked into the office, it was right there. You would see it if you were going into the offices. Well, fast forward, Ralph dies, the Pegulas buy the Bills, and they decide to put up a bunch of Ralph's stuff for auction because they cleaned out the offices and wanted to make them their own, right? So I see the blind refs available for auction. So of course I have to bid on it because I didn't know the whole story, but I knew part of the story. So I bid on it, I won it. And as soon as I won it, I wrote a personal letter to Mary and said, hey, I know there's a story behind this. I know it's related to the New England game, but I'm not sure of the whole story. Would you be kind enough to tell me? The day she got my letter, she called me. I said, oh, I got to tell you the story.
Some right from her mouth too. Wow, that's awesome.
Right. So we had to put that in the book because that's a great story.
Now describe what's the symbolism of the blind ref. Does he have like his hands over his eyes or like thick glasses or walking stick or?
No, his eyes are, you can I'll see if I can actually get it and show you, but he has like spectacles, like Coke bottle spectacles.
Okay.
Over his eyes. He can hardly see. And then he's got
giving a touchdown.
Like it's a touchdown. And the football is at the base of his feet. It's a very cool statue.
That sounds like it. Wow.
And Mary, and we were able to get Mary to write the foreword for the book too. So she was very helpful in our project. So it was great to be able to tie her into that too. So.
Well, that is such a great story. I thank you guys for sharing that with me. That's awesome. So, so I take it that Tagliabue didn't come to any other parties at the Wilsons after that. Probably.
Yeah,
probably
I don't know
what to expect.
But that is one of the other things, Darren, we should say within the book. We do tell some of the stories about how the collectible was gotten. If it's a unique story like that. So we tell that story. So some of the stories that are pretty interesting around how something was acquired, we'll kind of tell that as part of the story of the object as well.
Okay. Oh yeah, like the megaphone story. But another interesting one is, when Greg went down for the Super Bowl and almost got arrested because he was doing something nefarious. I'll let Greg tell the story, but that's just something I felt part of. I think he
wasn't with Ray Lewis before one of those Super Bowls or something, was he?
No. But I think one of the things about being a collector, and I'm a fan, and I have a few items. You can see I got a few items in my office, but I'm not a collector on Greg's scale. But every once in a while, we all do something kind of crazy to get some object or whatever. But very few of us will go to the extreme of almost being incarcerated. And Greg did. So Greg, I'm gonna lead you in to tell that story.
So a friend of mine who is as avid a collector as I am, we go down to the Super Bowl and we get there. And of course, we're all about what can we collect about the Super Bowl because it's our first Super Bowl, right?
This is 25, right?
Yeah, 25. Super Bowl 25 in Tampa. So one of the things we see is they have street signs up and down the streets in downtown Tampa. Gigantic signs with Super Bowl 25 logos. So this guy, Noel, because we mentioned him in the book, and I are like, we got to get one of those signs for each of us. So we hatched this bright idea after looking around the city while we're there for a day, and we say, oh, hey, there's a couple of like side streets that have these signs. So let's go to one of the side streets and we'll cut one down. So now Noel's I'm about 6 foot, 200 pounds. And then Noel is smaller than I am. So we, craft this idea. You shimmy up on my shoulders. And we got, razor blades that we bought at like a CVS pharmacy. And it's like, okay, because we can then cut the strings that are holding them. So he climbs up my shoulders and he starts.
I'm starting to get a picture of like I Love Lucy or something.
Yeah, yes,
exactly.
That's a good.
Doesn't sound like it.
That's a good metaphor. So he's up there just starting to cut, and all of a sudden, coming around the corner, here comes the police officer car. Pulls up, gets out of his car, looks up at us and goes, "What are you gentlemen doing?" And of course, so we explained to him, well, these are really cool signs. And he goes, look, let me save you a lot of trouble. He's there. Look, you can either continue to cut the sign down and I'll have to arrest you, or the day after the Super Bowl, the Chamber of Commerce is going to be selling these signs for $25. I suggest that you go to the Chamber of Commerce after the Super Bowl and buy them. So Noel comes down off my shoulders and we just walk away and say, thank you, sir.
So that one was probably on like 2250 because it had a cut mark in it, right?
Right. Right.
Wow. But we wanted to include those types of stories because I think most collectors have some story that they did something crazy to get, whether it's they wanted to collect all the beer cups that had Bills logos on them at the stadium and they were crawling under a seat or whatever it is. And to what extreme will someone who's really rabid go? And Greg obviously goes to these extremes to complete his collection, and it kind of adds more of a unique flavor to it and more color because people can relate to that. People would be probably reading it thinking, I do the same damn thing, and relatable,
Or it's giving people to go to Super Bowl 57 some great ideas. Find the street signs wherever. I'm not even sure where it's played next year, but
that's right. It's in Arizona, Glendale. We're going. The Bills are going next year.
Hey, I believe it. They probably should have been there this year. That was a great game. So what were your thoughts about the Bills' past season here? I mean, other than the game, which was probably one of the greatest games ever played. I think it's going to go down in history. That was extremely exciting at the end. And I had my team wasn't in it, but it was just such fun to watch as a football fan. But what do you guys think about the Bills this past year, and where do you think they're going to go?
Well, I'll go first on that one. I honestly believe that you take away those 13 seconds where we were the better, or the Bills were the better team, they would have easily beaten Cincinnati. And I believe in my heart they would have beaten Los Angeles. And that, again, I'm a fan. I'm supposed to feel that way, but we easily could have been in the Super Bowl and could have won it. This could have been our year. Now, you never know. Next year, somebody could get hurt. You just don't know. I mean, you think Josh Allen's going to be great for the next 10 years, but injuries or any unforeseen calamity could befall them and keep them from ever getting to a Super Bowl. This team could have done it. And had they not maybe lost that Jaguars game, who knows how the playoffs could have played out. Maybe they would have had home field advantage all the way through, and then they would have just walked to the Super Bowl. But I think they were definitely the class of the AFC, and I think that Josh Allen pretty much cemented his place as one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in this league. So that's my feeling.
Yeah, I think it was a season of missed opportunity. Obviously the team had a lull in the middle of the season and lost, several games that, they probably shouldn't have. I mean, I think what's an interesting statistic is every game they won by more than 10 points, and they were 0-6 in games decided by 1 score or less, which basically said they dominated their opponents. And then when they played a close game, there was one play here or there that, cost them the game.
And you could usually point at that one play too, like the Titans game with the Derrick Henry run, or,
Right. Even the Patriots game in Buffalo, if, the guy doesn't break the 64-yard run, they're not playing from ahead the whole game. It's a different, it's a different ball game, as obviously the Bills showed they were the much superior team. The Jacksonville game cost us playing. The Kansas City game would have been at home. We would have played them at home if we had won that game. And, I want to see Mahomes come here with 25-mile-an-hour winds and, snow blowing sideways and see how, comfortable he is, playing in those kind of conditions. And I agree with Jeff. I think we would have beat Cincinnati. I have no question that we would have beat the Rams because, why did the Rams beat Cincinnati? Donald dominated. Well, that's because Burrow doesn't move outside the pocket. You think he's going to run down Josh Allen? Nah, no. They don't get 7 sacks against the Bills. Maybe they get 1. So I just think we'll look back on it as a year that we should have won, and we didn't. And like Jeff said, sure, we're a preseason favorite for next year, but you just never know. And this year, I think I read yesterday we had the second fewest injuries in the league. Well, that's not going to happen every year,
right?
So we were, other than Tre'Davious White, we were healthy.
Very true.
Now
I have a question I'm going to ask each of you, give you each an opportunity. What is, in your mind, the greatest moment in Buffalo Bills history? And Jeff,
64 championship.
I'm sorry?
64 championship. I just, those back-to-back championships in 64, there was a team that set out to win its league championship that year, and they did it. No other Buffalo Bills team has done that. Now, the Bills of today might be more talented, and the Bills of the 90s might be more talented, but those teams in 1964 and 65, they set a goal and they went and they did it. So, the 64 championship was the first major league sports championship in the city's history. And to me, that's the most significant.
Okay. What Jeff, let me have you elaborate in a little bit. What do you think is maybe the most defining moment of those championship teams? Every was that a play or, a call or a certain game?
Well,
what comes to your mind when you think of that?
In the 64 game, you had the hit heard around the world. You had the Mike Stratton tackle on Keith Lincoln. And, you sometimes, it's easy to point to like one play in a game and everybody will say one play doesn't make a game. Well, in that particular instance, San Diego was dominating up until that hit happened. And they went flat, completely flat after that. You can look at other games and you can hear, you hear these myths about other games, and then you watch the game film and you're like, well, no, it didn't really go the way they're saying it went. Like when they played the 66 championship game, everybody says, well, they lost because Dudley Meredith fumbled the ball in the opening kickoff. Well, there were 2 dropped pick sixes by the Buffalo Bills in that game that would have turned the tables and turned the momentum. One by Tom Yannick and one by Haygood Clark. If they would have caught those balls and returned them, it would have changed everything. So when you say, well, one play doesn't make a game, well, it did in 64. That's the one time where you can really say that play changed everything. And from that point on, the Bills took over and they dominated the rest of the game. You watch the film, the Chargers were never in it again. So to me, that Mike Stratton hit is there's a lot of great plays in Buffalo Bills history, but that might be the most important one.
Oh,
Greg,
okay.
Greg, I'm sure you might have a different opinion.
No, Greg, I'm from another planet. I came down here. I don't know anything about football. You're going to show me. I have time for one video clip. What's that one clip in Buffalo Bills history that you think is a defining moment?
Well, to me, it's really 2, but I'll focus on one. It's the Bills' 51-3 AFC Championship victory for us to go to Super Bowl for the first time. And, the backdrop there is the Raiders were commitment to excellence, They were cocky. They had, I don't know, 20 straight years of winning records, and they were in all kinds of playoff games and championship games, and, the Raiders mystique and all that stuff. And they talked all week about how they were going to come into Buffalo. The weather wasn't going to bother them, and they were going to blow out the Bills and all this stuff. And the first series of the game, the Bills are driving down the field, running the no-huddle offense, peeling off plays every 15 seconds. And Howie Long has to call a timeout after 7 plays because he's so exhausted. And that really set the tone to the entire game. And, of course, the Bills go up 41-3 at halftime. And being in the stadium, knowing at halftime we're going to the Super Bowl, was just incredible. And the entire second half was, nothing but a party. And I mean, that game, we could have won 85-3. I mean, there was just, it was kind of like the Bills Patriots perfect game, in the playoffs this year. Well, that's how the Bills played the first half, only a no-huddle offense that was running plays every 15 seconds. And the Raiders had no idea what hit them. And I think that, my argument is, that was the best team in Bills history. They should have won the Super Bowl. If they play the Giants 10 times, they win 9. Yeah. But it was the one day. And I would argue, too, if the Giants had not played us in December, they wouldn't have had a chance in the Super Bowl because they wouldn't have known how to play the no huddle. But I think having played us, that was a big advantage for them.
No, I don't know. I'm not a Bills fan. I mean, I get to watch a lot of the Bills because we're in their market here. Actually, to the expense of sometimes I can't see the Steelers play like the Browns or something in a big game, or Ravens, but we get to watch the Bills quite a bit. But I think probably one of the biggest games of Bills history that really sticks in my head is Frank Reich's comeback against the Houston Oilers. I mean, I was ready to turn that game off, and I usually don't turn games off, when it's, it was a playoff game, I believe, right?
Yes. Yeah. Divisional.
So it was the only game on at the time. And I'm sitting there going, why am I watching this? Why, Houston.
We couldn't watch it here. It wasn't sold out. That's the thing. If you didn't go to the game, you had to listen to it on the radio. And, and that's another item that we did include in this book is, Greg has the ticket signed by Frank Reich that we used in that to tell the story about that game.
Oh, you guys didn't have it on in Buffalo, because we were able to watch it here.
It wasn't aired in Buffalo. It wasn't sold out.
Huh? Yeah, we were able to watch it here. So yeah, I'm sitting there going, boy, is there something else on? I was getting ready to put one of the kids Barney tapes in or something at that point. But I'm glad
I was in the stadium for that game, and 15,000 people left at halftime.
I'll bet.
Because, it was like the game's over, right? I mean, nobody thought they would come back. And, I mean, it was like a tidal wave. I think that's how Van Miller described it. The third quarter was just incredible because, the Bills came all the way back in one quarter. It wasn't like, it took them the entire second half to get back into the game. They got back into the game in less than a quarter.
Truly amazing game. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But gentlemen, I thank you for your time sharing this great history. And let's give some information where folks can get a copy of your book. I know you said you had some phone numbers and some information.
Yeah, so the book was published by St. Johann Press, so you can get it directly from the publisher. Their phone number is area code 201-387-1529. It's also available in Western New York at most of the local bookstores. It's also available at the Buffalo store. There's about 6 of those, the BFLO store across Western New York. So it's also available there. It should be available on Amazon soon. It's not there yet, but it should be.
It is available on the Buffalo News page? Okay.
Yes, it's also available on the Buffalo News store website.
Okay, maybe you gentlemen can send that link to me. I'll post that link on the show notes of the podcast for listeners and the phone number for St. Johann, and that way everybody can get a copy of this great book at these two gentlemen have written. So Greg and Jeff, I appreciate you coming on, sharing a great history and all your thoughts. And thank you for coming on.
Hey, thanks a lot, Darren. Appreciate it.
Take care, Bills. Go Bills.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandom at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.